Minnesota has unexpectedly become ground zero for one of the biggest government scandals to hit in a long time, and what's wild is that most people outside the Midwest had no clue how massive this mess really was until whistleblowers stepped up and basically said, you know, that $1 billion everyone's worried about, yeah, that might just be the beginning. Yeah, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Because now they believe the real number could land closer to $8 billion of taxpayer money that just vanished while government officials were either asleep at the wheel or pretending they didn't see anything happening. And prosecutors are literally describing an industrial complex of fraud, not some small-time scheme. Not one or two shady operators, but dozens of businesses apparently created for the sole purpose of ripping off state programs that were supposed to help people who actually needed assistance. Kids who needed food, families struggling during COVID, children with autism who needed specialized care, small businesses just trying to survive the shutdowns. And instead of that money going where it was promised, some people allegedly figured out exactly how to turn Minnesota's generosity into a giant feeding trough. And they didn't just nibble, they feasted. This kind of fraud doesn't just happen by accident. It takes planning, coordination, and a whole network of people who understand exactly how the system works and exactly how to break it. And here's where the political part becomes explosive. Reports say the majority of those involved came from Minnesota's Somali community, which immediately puts a spotlight on the state's most recognizable Somali American leader, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, who has built her political brand on expanding welfare programs, supporting immigrant communities, and defending the very systems now accused of being completely exploited. So, of course, when the fraud news broke, Democrats started scrambling to explain what went wrong, while Republicans just stood back like, we've been warning about this for years because nothing says government failure louder than billions disappearing while nobody in charge seems to notice. So Minnesota officials rushed to say they're bringing in outside auditors, tightening programs, fixing oversight, and Governor Tim Walz used some tough-sounding lines like, if folks think Minnesota's generous spirit gives them cover, they're mistaken. And as soon as any fraud issues were raised, the state looked into it. But then whistleblowers say that's straight up not true, that they did raise the alarms, they did try to report the fraud. And instead of being thanked for protecting taxpayer money, they were allegedly retaliated against, ignored, punished, pushed aside. Like leadership didn't want the truth to come out. And that's why state Republicans are now saying you either have an administration that is massively incompetent or willfully complicit, because you don't accidentally lose a mountain of cash that tall. Especially over years, especially with people waving red flags right in your face. And while that pressure builds, another storyline hits at the same time. ICE launches a new immigration enforcement operation in the Twin Cities called Operation Metro Surge, making at least 12 arrests, including multiple Somali individuals with previous convictions for fraud, which just dumps gasoline on the political fire because now critics are claiming, see, weak oversight plus irresponsible immigration policy equals disaster. And nobody in Minnesota leadership wants to be the one caught holding the match when the public finally connects those dots. Even the Small Business Administration jumps in. Yes, the agency normally focused on helping entrepreneurs because a huge chunk of this mess traces back to COVID relief money. The billions rushed out the door when the government tried to save the economy during lockdowns, and the SBA administrator straight up says that Governor Walz tried to obstruct their investigation, issuing a statement like, despite his best efforts to get in our way, we're still exposing abuse and holding perpetrators accountable, which is basically the political version of slapping someone across the face on national TV. And you would think in a moment that's serious. The elected representative whose district is right in the middle of this would come out strong with accountability, demands for justice, anything that shows she actually cares that taxpayer money meant to feed kids and help families was being stolen. But when CNN asked Ilhan Omar the simplest, most obvious question, why did fraud get so out of control in Minnesota? Her answer was a total word salad, something along the lines of not scammers, trying to live a financial lifestyle off taxpayer generosity. And they've branded some huge legislation, the One Big Beautiful Bill, that will supposedly fix all of this by shrinking government, boosting jobs, helping small businesses desperate for workers, and restoring what they love to call the dignity of work, which politically is a message that lands hard with voters who feel like they're grinding every day while others cheat the system. Meanwhile, every new investigative headline that drops just keeps fueling the outrage. Because again, we're not talking about someone lying about their income to get a couple of extra benefits here, but we're talking billions, potentially, stolen from programs designed to feed hungry children and keep families afloat during the biggest crisis of our lifetime. And no matter what your politics are, that hits a nerve. Americans hate seeing their tax money thrown into a black hole while politicians give excuses, and they really hate being told nothing to see here when the scale is this massive. Because everyone knows if a regular citizen messes up their taxes by even a few $100s, the government finds them immediately, but when billions disappear inside the government, suddenly nobody has a clear answer. And everyone's pretending they never saw the red flags. So now investigations are stacking up, state, federal, law enforcement, auditors, immigration agencies, and with every subpoena, every whistleblower statement, every arrest in Operation Metro Surge, the heat rises, and people are starting to ask the real questions: who signed the checks, who approved the programs, who ignored the warnings, who benefited from this money, who protected the fraudsters, and who needs to take responsibility now that it's exposed. Because whether it's incompetence or corruption, either one is a total failure when billions are stolen on the backs of taxpayers. And politically, this whole disaster is becoming the biggest gift Republicans could dream of: a real-time case study they can point to every time they argue for smaller government and stronger oversight. A story that ties together immigration, COVID spending, welfare expansion, and democratic leadership all in one neat package. Especially when the congresswoman most connected to the affected community gives an answer that looks like she's reading random words off a bingo card instead of acknowledging reality. And that's why this isn't dying anytime soon. Minnesota is now under a national microscope. Reporters are digging deeper. Whistleblowers are likely to talk more. Investigations will keep turning up documents. And the public wants to know how the people in charge let this grow into what prosecutors now describe as an entire system built around ripping off the state. And the longer politicians try to downplay it, the louder the outrage will get. Because billions don't just walk away on their own. And if the whistleblowers are right, this is only the beginning of a scandal that could reshape not just Minnesota politics, but the entire national conversation about how much money government should be handing out and what happens when you build programs faster than you build accountability. So buckle up. Because what started as maybe a billion fraud story is now a political earthquake rumbling through the Midwest and headed straight toward Washington. And every day this drags on, more Americans are asking the same angry question: where did our money go and who let it happen? Well, when new programs are designed to help people, there are third parties, and they were created quickly. So guardrails didn't get set up basically dancing around the issue without taking the slightest responsibility or even acknowledging the specific corruption that's already been uncovered. And that clip blew up because it looked like she was dodging, deflecting, and trying to paint this as a harmless paperwork glitch instead of a full-scale criminal enterprise that siphoned away billions while officials looked the other way. So conservative media pounced, calling her response exactly what it was: nonsense that ignored the real problem and then made the broader argument they love to make. That this is exactly what you get under a democratic socialist welfare system: too much money flying around, too many people feeding off the government, zero accountability, and hardworking taxpayers paying for everything while bureaucrats shrug. And suddenly Minnesota turns into the perfect example for those arguing that government programs have gotten way too big and way too easy to abuse. With COVID just exposing how quickly scammers can rush in, when money gets printed faster than guardrails can be built, then outlets start quoting Wall Street Journal columnist Kimberly Strassel, saying this isn't just a story about fraud, it's a warning that too many people have become dependent on government programs, and if the system keeps expanding without oversight, the truly needy end up the ones losing the most. So conservatives connect the dots even further. Remember the recent Democrat shutdown that dragged on for 43 days? They claim that shutdown revealed just how massive and bloated welfare spending has become, and now they're using the Minnesota scandal as the poster child for why they need to push reforms like tightening eligibility, bringing back strong work requirements, and making sure welfare is temporary and focus on people who actually need it.